As Earth's brutal retaliation stunned the Galactic Council into silence, Part 1 Commander Thomas Hayes stood among the smoking ruins of what was once New Chicago Colony. The air still reeked of plasma discharge and burning materials. His environmental suit's sensors flashed warning after warning about radiation levels and toxic particles. None of that mattered to him now. All he could see were the outlines of buildings reduced to ash and the occasional personal item that had somehow survived the attack. A child's toy, a family photo, a wedding ring. "Sir, preliminary count is complete," said Lieutenant Davis, her voice hollow through the comm system. "Estimated casualties at 39,872. Hayes nodded silently. Nearly 40,000 people. Gone. The Galactic Council's peacekeeping force had struck without warning during the colony's night cycle, claiming the human settlement violated territorial agreements that had been signed decades ago. Men, women, children, all vaporized in their sleep. "Document everything," Hayes ordered, his voice barely containing his rage. "Every building, every body, every piece of evidence. I want it all recorded and transmitted to Earth Command." As the ranking officer of Earth's expeditionary forces in this sector, it fell to Hayes to record the devastation. His hands shook as he captured footage of a nursery, the tiny beds now nothing but twisted metal frames. The Council had long treated humans as second-class citizens of the galaxy, restricting their expansion and limiting their access to advanced technologies. But this massacre crossed every line of interstellar law. "Commander," Davis called out, "we found survivors." Hayes rushed to the emergency medical tent where a handful of colonists were being treated. Most had been outside the main settlement when the attack came, maintenance workers, night shift miners returning from the outskirts. Their eyes held the 1,000-yard stare of those who had witnessed the unimaginable. A woman grabbed Hayes' arm as he passed. "They didn't even warn us," she whispered. "One minute everything was normal, the next the sky turned red and everything just burned." Hayes knelt beside her. "I promise you this won't go unanswered." "What will Earth do?" the woman asked. "The Council controls everything. They'll just call it an unfortunate incident and move on." "They always do." Hayes had no answer that would comfort her. Instead, he simply squeezed her hand before continuing his grim task. In the orbiting survey ship, Hayes compiled the evidence. The attack signatures were unmistakable: Drakhtari plasma weapons, Council military-grade shields to prevent early detection, and precision targeting that could only come from official Council star charts. This wasn't a rogue operation or a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act of war, approved at the highest levels. "Transmission ready, sir," reported Communications Officer Patel. "Send everything to Earth Command," Hayes ordered. "Highest priority, full encryption." The transmission would take hours to reach Earth, even through the quantum relays. Hayes stared at the planet below, once destined to be a thriving center of human expansion, now a graveyard. He made a silent vow to the dead that justice would come. In United Earth Defense Headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Victoria Stone watched the transmission from New Chicago with growing horror. The room fell into complete silence as footage played across the main screen. Hardened military officers and civilian leaders alike were stunned by the scale of destruction. When the footage ended, Stone locked eyes with President Maria Rodriguez, who sat at the head of the table. The president gave a single grim nod. The decision was made without words. For the first time in its short galactic history, humanity would not sue for peace or beg for justice through diplomatic channels. "Activate Contingency Protocol Theta," President Rodriguez ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the command. General Marcus Wright, head of military operations, stood up. "Madam President, once Theta is activated, there's no going back. The Council will consider it an act of war." "They already committed an act of war, General," Rodriguez replied. "They just don't know we're capable of responding in kind." She turned to Admiral Stone. "How soon can our deep space fleets be mobilized?" "The visible ones?" 3 days, Stone answered. "The Shadow Fleet? They're already in position." This revelation caused murmurs around the table. For years, Earth had maintained the appearance of limited space capabilities, while secretly building a formidable military force using reverse-engineered alien technology. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt and beyond Neptune had produced vessels far beyond what the Council believed humans capable of creating. And Operation Blackout? Rodriguez asked. Ready to implement at your command, confirmed the head of Earth Intelligence, Director James Foster. Every human embassy, trading post, and diplomatic mission across Council space can go dark within hours. Our people have been preparing for this contingency for years. Rodriguez stood, her decision final. The Council believes we are weak, that we will accept this atrocity as we've accepted their restrictions and condescension for decades. They're about to learn how deeply they've misjudged humanity. She looked around the table. Implement Theta, full spectrum. On Celestia Prime, the gleaming capital world of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Franklin Reed sat silently in the Grand Chamber as High Minister Dravox addressed the assembled representatives of 300 worlds. The massive alien with his 6 limbs and shimmering scales gestured to holographic displays showing the remains of New Chicago. The action taken was necessary security measures against human expansion into protected space, Dravox declared. While the loss of life is regrettable, the colony was established in direct violation of Treaty Section 47, Paragraph 12, regarding settlement boundaries. Reed said nothing as murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. Most species in the Council viewed humans as primitive newcomers to galactic society, barely 2 centuries into faster-than-light travel, while others had been spacefaring for millennia. Human concerns were typically dismissed as the complaints of children not yet ready for full participation in galactic affairs. When Dravox finished speaking, he turned to Reed. Does Earth's representative wish to respond? Reed rose slowly from his seat. The chamber fell silent, expecting the usual human response, protest followed by eventual acceptance of Council authority. Instead, Reed simply walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing through the vast chamber. Before reaching the door, Reed paused and reached into his pocket. He removed a small black cube and placed it carefully on the chamber floor. Every diplomat present recognized the ancient symbol, a formal severance of diplomatic relations, a tradition dating back to the early days of the Council. The silence in the chamber deepened as Reed walked out without a word. His silence had unsettled the delegates more than any protest could have. Dravox recovered quickly. Earth's emotional reaction is noted but changes nothing. The matter is concluded, but the matter was far from concluded. Within hours, as Reed's shuttle departed Celestia Prime, every human embassy across Council space went dark simultaneously. Communication channels with Earth shut down. Human traders in ports across 100 worlds quietly boarded their ships and departed without explanation. Human civilians living on Council worlds disappeared overnight. All communication with Earth ceased. The first phase of humanity's response had begun, leaving the Council in confused silence. On his shuttle, Reed watched Celestia Prime shrink in the view screen. His aide, Marcus Turner, approached with a secure communication device. Earth Command confirms Operation Blackout is complete, sir, Turner reported. All our people are either withdrawn or in secure locations. Reed nodded. And the Shadow Fleet? Moving into position. Admiral Stone sends word that Phase 2 will commence in exactly 14 days. Reed thought of the faces in the Council chamber, smug, dismissive, convinced of their superiority and immunity. They had no idea what was coming. The Council believes we're retreating in defeat, Reed said quietly. By the time they realize what's actually happening, it will be too late. As the shuttle entered hyperspace, Reed closed his eyes. The people of New Chicago would have justice, and the Galactic Council was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating humanity. The retaliation had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Earth's brutal retaliation stunned the Galactic Council into silence. Part 2. 2 weeks after the diplomatic blackout, the Galactic Council still expected Earth to return to the negotiating table. Humans were known for their diplomatic persistence, their eagerness to be accepted into the galactic community. This silence was unusual, but most Council members believed it would end soon. Then the mysterious attacks began. The first incident occurred in deep space. The Rigelian fleet's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, exploded without warning while patrolling the borders of Council space. There was no distress call, no signs of attack. One moment the massive warship existed, the next it was nothing but scattered debris and radiation. All 12,000 crew members perished instantly. 3 days later, the Arcturus banking network collapsed. The financial system that handled the fortunes of Council elites and managed interstellar trade across 18 sectors simply went offline. Trillions in assets vanished into digital nowhere. Markets crashed across Council space. Before the week ended, 3 Council research stations, each working on classified weapons technology, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, the entire station's personnel and all research data disappeared without trace. In the Council's emergency session, Security Director Malchior pounded his fist on the table. These are human reprisals. Who else would target us now? The 7-foot-tall, gray-skinned alien had spent decades studying human behavior patterns. Unlike many Council members, he never underestimated the species. High Minister Dravox remained skeptical. You have no proof. Humans lack the technology for such attacks. Their ships are detectable, their weapons primitive by our standards. Then explain how our most advanced monitoring systems detected nothing, Malchior demanded. No ships, no energy signatures, no warning. He displayed holographic images of the attack sites. It's as if the attacks are being carried out by ghosts. Perhaps it is another species taking advantage of the situation, suggested Minister Laura of the Bentari Collective. The Vex Dominion has long wished to expand into our territories. Malchior shook his head. The timing is too perfect. These are precisely targeted strikes against military and economic targets. This is Earth's response, and it's only beginning. Deep within an asteroid field in unclaimed space, the hidden base Olympus housed Earth's most classified military operations. Unlike the gleaming steel and glass of public human installations, Olympus was carved directly into a massive asteroid, its exterior indistinguishable from thousands of similar space rocks. In the command center, Lieutenant Gabriela Diaz studied tactical displays showing the aftermath of their recent operations. At 32, Diaz had already spent 12 years in Earth's Special Forces, but only the last 3 knowing about Olympus and the Shadow Fleet. Phase shift drive is fully recharged, reported Commander Jackson. The Nemesis is ready for the next mission. Diaz nodded with satisfaction. The UES Nemesis was humanity's most advanced warship, equipped with experimental technology that allowed it to briefly shift partially out of normal space-time, becoming virtually undetectable and capable of bypassing any known shielding system. Good. We move on the Theros to 3. Facility in 18 hours, Diaz said, studying the rotating hologram of their target, the heavily guarded Council archives. That's deep in Council space, Jackson pointed out. Even with phase shift, we're taking a significant risk. Diaz's expression remained determined. Those archives contain the records we need, proof that New Chicago wasn't an isolated incident but part of a larger plan. The door slid open, and Admiral Stone entered the command center. Everyone stood at attention. At ease, Stone said, approaching the tactical display. Lieutenant Diaz, your team's operations have exceeded expectations. The Council is in disarray, exactly as planned. Thank you, Admiral. We're preparing for Theros III now. Stone studied the mission plans. This one is particularly important. Our intelligence suggests the archives contain records of Council deliberations going back decades. If they've been planning systematic action against human colonies, we'll find the evidence there. What about the Council response? Jackson asked. They must be mobilizing their fleets by now. Stone's lip curled slightly. They're looking for massive human warships and finding nothing. They can't defend against what they can't see or understand. She turned to Diaz. Once you extract the data from the archives, make sure to destroy the facility. We want the Council to know this was no accident. Understood, Admiral, Diaz replied. And the personnel at the facility? Give them time to evacuate. We want the Council leaders, not their archivists and guards. This is justice, not vengeance. 18 hours later, the UES Nemesis dropped out of hyperspace 10 million kilometers from Theros III, far enough to avoid standard detection grids. The sleek black ship, with its unusual geometric hull designed to minimize energy signatures, powered up its phase shift drive. Phase shift engaged, announced the pilot. We are now operating at 60% shift. The ship seemed to flicker slightly as it partially phased out of normal space-time. To external sensors, it would appear as nothing more than a momentary energy fluctuation, easily dismissed as background radiation. Diaz addressed her team of 12 elite operatives in the deployment bay. Each wore advanced stealth suits with personal phase shift generators, smaller versions of the ship's technology. Our mission is straightforward. Infiltrate. Locate and extract the classified files, plant charges, and withdraw. The archives are primarily automated with minimal security personnel. We expect light resistance, but stay alert. Council races have different physiologies and capabilities. The Nemesis approached Theros III, a small moon orbiting a gas giant. The archive facility covered nearly a quarter of the moon's surface. An enormous complex of interconnected buildings and underground vaults housing trillions of data crystals and physical records from across the galaxy. Boundary defense grid ahead, reported the pilot. Take us through, Diaz ordered. The Nemesis slipped through the defensive grid like a ghost through a wall. Automated weapon systems didn't fire. Alarm systems remained silent. To the facility's sensors, nothing had breached their perimeter. The ship landed in a maintenance yard near the central archives. Diaz and her team deployed. Their phase shift generators synced with the ship's systems. Remember, we're at 60% shift, Diaz reminded them. You'll appear as shadowy figures if spotted. Avoid physical contact with personnel if possible. They moved through the facility like wraiths. Security cameras recorded only occasional flickers and temperature drops. The few guards they encountered reported strange disturbances, but found nothing when they investigated. In the central data core, Specialist Rivera connected to the main terminal. I'm in. Beginning data extraction. What exactly are we looking for? Asked Sergeant Wilson. Council security directives regarding Earth and human colonies, Rivera replied, his fingers flying across the interface. Specifically, anything classified as protocol limitless. Diaz raised an eyebrow. You know something I don't, Rivera? Intelligence intercepted communications mentioning protocol limitless in reference to New Chicago. It's highly classified, Council Security Level 9. Rivera's search algorithms worked through the massive database. After several tense minutes, he straightened. Found it. Downloading now. As the data transferred to their secure drives, Rivera's expression grew increasingly troubled. Lieutenant, you need to see this. Diaz moved to his side, scanning the documents appearing on screen. Her face hardened with each passing second. This isn't just about New Chicago, she said quietly. They plan to systematically eliminate human colonies over the next 5 years. New Chicago was just the first. She looked up at her team. They called it controlled species regression, pushing us back to our home system to prevent our further development. Wilson shook his head in disbelief. They were going to wipe out all our colonies. Billions of people? Not all at once, Rivera explained, still reading. Gradually, with plausible deniability for each incident. Reactor failures, mysterious diseases, asteroid impacts, all engineered. Download complete, announced the system. Diaz composed herself. Plant the charges. Set timers for 30 minutes. Enough time for personnel to evacuate. As they moved to exit, Diaz activated her secure comm. Admiral Stone, we have the files. Protocol limitless confirmed. This goes deeper than we thought. Understood, came Stone's reply. Complete your mission and return. This evidence changes everything. The team placed explosives at key structural points throughout the facility. As they finished, alarm systems finally detected anomalies and began blaring throughout the complex. Evacuation orders are being issued, reported Wilson, monitoring facility communications. Personnel are moving to emergency transports. Good. Back to the ship, Diaz ordered. The team returned to the Nemesis without incident. As they lifted off, still in phase shift, they watched the facility staff evacuating in an orderly fashion. All personnel should clear the facility before detonation, Rivera confirmed. 28 minutes after they planted the charges. With the Nemesis safely beyond the moon's orbit, the archive facility erupted in a series of precisely calculated explosions. The blast destroyed the data centers and central structures, while leaving peripheral buildings intact. Earth's brutal retaliation stunned the Galactic Council into silence. Part 3. 1 month into what galactic news networks now called the Shadow War, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session in their most secure location. No longer trusting the open chambers of Celestia Prime, the 12 High Council members, representatives of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, gathered on their ancestral homeworld, Nexus Prime. The ancient fortress deep beneath the planet's surface had stood for 10,000 years, its location kept secret from all but the most trusted officials. If there was anywhere in the galaxy safe from human reach, the Council believed it was here. Security Director Malchior provided his grim report to the assembled leaders. In the past 30 days, we have lost 27 military installations, 14 research facilities, and control of the primary financial networks in 6 sectors. Our attempts to track human ships have failed completely. We still have no explanation for their ability to bypass our most advanced detection systems. Ambassador Krell of the Novalian Confederacy, a tall, thin being with paper-white skin and enormous black eyes, rose to speak. This cannot continue. I propose immediate military occupation of Earth and all known human colonies. We must crush this rebellion before more damage is done. Several council members nodded in agreement, but Admiral Jorth of the Galactic Defense Fleet raised a hand in caution. The Admiral's blue-scaled face showed the weariness of weeks spent chasing phantoms. Such action would be problematic for 2 reasons, Jorth stated. First, we have no idea where the attacks are coming from. Earth's official military forces remain in their home system, apparently defensive. Second, direct assault on Earth would legitimize their grievances in the eyes of neutral worlds. Already, 37 species have issued statements condemning our actions at New Chicago since those classified files were leaked. High Minister Dravox seethed. Then what do you propose, Admiral? That we sit idle while these humans dismantle everything we've built over millennia? Before Jorth could respond, the chamber's lights flickered. The advanced security systems that had protected council deliberations for thousands of years suddenly went silent. In the center of the room, where the galactic map usually projected, a hologram appeared. The face of Ambassador Franklin Reed. Guards drew weapons, but there was nothing to shoot. The hologram smiled slightly. Distinguished members of the High Council, Reed's voice echoed through the chamber. I apologize for interrupting your secret meeting, but I thought it time we spoke directly. How did you find this place? Dravox demanded, his scales flaring with rage. This location is unknown to humans. You believed yourselves untouchable, Reed replied calmly. You were wrong. Just as you were wrong about human capabilities, human resolve, and human memory. His expression hardened. We remember every slight, every restriction, every condescension over the past century. And we will never forget New Chicago. The hologram expanded, showing Reed standing in what appeared to be a military command center. I am authorized to present terms for ceasefire. The complete restructuring of the Council to give equal representation to all species, regardless of their technological age. Immediate removal of all restrictions on human technological development. Full reparations for New Chicago. And the trial of those who authorized Protocol Limitless. Dravox laughed bitterly. You expect us to surrender our authority because of some minor attacks and leaked documents? The Council has stood for 50,000 years. Humans have barely mastered space travel. Reed's hologram nodded as if expecting this response. I thought you might need further motivation to consider our terms seriously. The hologram changed to show a view of space. This transmission is happening in real time. What the Council saw next struck them silent. Hundreds of warships, their design unlike anything seen before, decloaked in perfect formation above Nexus Prime. Similar images appeared showing identical fleets above each of the Council homeworlds simultaneously. Impossible, whispered Admiral Jorth. Our early warning system were bypassed hours ago, Reed's voice explained as his face reappeared. Earth's ultimatum stands. You have 6 hours to comply before we demonstrate our full military capacity. The hologram vanished, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Admiral Victoria Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Reckoning, flagship of Earth's hidden fleet. The massive vessel, over 2 kilometers long, represented the pinnacle of human military engineering, combining reverse-engineered alien technology with human innovation. All ships report ready, Admiral, announced Captain Miguel Ramirez. The Council has begun emergency evacuations of government centers on all targeted worlds. Stone nodded with satisfaction. Let them run. It drives home the point that they're not untouchable after all. She turned to Communications Officer Wright. Any response to our terms? Nothing official, ma'am. But we're intercepting a lot of frantic communications between Council worlds. They're in disarray, some advocating immediate surrender, others calling for full military response. Stone had expected as much. The Council had maintained control through a combination of technological superiority, and the myth of invincibility. Both had now been shattered. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called from the sensor station. "We're detecting Council Defense Fleet mobilization in 6 sectors. They appear to be organizing a counterattack." Stone studied the tactical display showing Council warship movements. "They're still thinking conventionally, gathering their forces into attack formations." She turned to Ramirez. "Have all ships maintain position but ready defensive systems. No preemptive strikes." As Earth forces maintained their positions above Council homeworlds, panic spread among civilian populations who could see the massive ships through telescopes and on public video feeds. The sight of unknown warships appearing from nowhere had a powerful psychological impact, even on species that had considered themselves masters of the galaxy. On the planet's surface, Security Director Malchior urged immediate action as the Council debated their response. "Their ships must have weaknesses," he insisted. "No technology is perfect. We must strike now with everything we have." Admiral Joreth accessed his fleet command systems and frowned deeply. "Something is wrong. I'm unable to activate weapon systems on any of our orbital platforms." Across all Council worlds, military commanders reported the same alarming discovery. Defense systems had been compromised, weapons and shields disabled by dormant viruses planted years ago in their operating systems. "How is this possible?" Dravox demanded. "Our systems are isolated, protected." Malchior's face showed a rare expression, fear. They'd been planning this for years. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic exchange, every cultural mission, they were gathering information, planting backdoors in our systems. As the deadline approached, Commander Thomas Hayes stood in the memorial garden hastily erected on the ruins of New Chicago. Holographic images of the dead floated among actual flowers planted by survivors and relief workers. Hayes had insisted on returning to the colony, wanting to be here when justice finally came. His communicator beeped with a priority message from Earth Command. Hayes read it and felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and solemnity. The message was brief. Council response received, defiant demonstration authorized. Hayes looked up at the sky, knowing what would happen next. Somewhere in space, Earth forces were preparing to show the Council exactly what humanity was capable of. Not against civilian targets, Earth leadership had been explicit about that, but against a military target chosen to send the clearest possible message. "Is it happening?" asked Davis, approaching from the medical facility where she had been treating survivors. "Yes," Hayes replied simply. "They refused our terms." Davis looked troubled. "Do you ever wonder if we're going too far? Becoming what we're fighting against?" Hayes gestured to the memorial around them. "The difference is choice. They chose to attack civilians without warning, to plan the systematic destruction of our colonies. We're choosing military targets, giving warnings, avoiding civilian casualties." He paused. "But I understand your concern. There's a fine line between justice and vengeance." On Nexus Prime, young Council member Lyra Taval sat alone in her private chambers, wrestling with a momentous decision. Unlike most Council races, the Aetheri were relatively young in galactic terms, having achieved spaceflight only a few centuries before humans. They understood what it meant to be treated as lesser beings by the elder races. Before her lay evidence she had secretly compiled over years, records showing how several Council elders, including her own mentor, had opposed the New Chicago attack and Protocol Limitless. The conspiracy wasn't universal. There had been voices of reason that were silenced. With trembling fingers, Lyra activated a hidden communication device, one not connected to Council systems. She had obtained it years ago from a human trader, never imagining she would use it like this. "This is Counselor Lyra Taval," she spoke softly into the device. "I request direct communication with Earth leadership. I have information critical to preventing further escalation." Within minutes, she was connected to a secure channel. Ambassador Reed's face appeared on the small screen. "Counselor Taval." Reed greeted her, surprise evident in his voice. "This is unexpected." Earth's brutal retaliation stunned the Galactic Council into silence. Part 4 Lieutenant James Wilson stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis as it dropped out of hyperspace near Omega Station. The massive research facility was built inside a hollow moon, its surface dotted with defense arrays and docking bays. Inside that seemingly impenetrable shell, the Council had developed their most advanced weapons technology for centuries, including the weapons used on New Chicago. Passive scans complete, reported Sensor Officer Taylor. Detecting approximately 8,000 life signs, all military or research personnel. No civilian presence confirmed. Wilson nodded, just as intelligence reported. Begin Phase 1. The Nemesis activated its phase shift drive, disappearing from conventional detection systems. To an outside observer, the advanced ship simply vanished, leaving barely a ripple in spacetime. Wilson turned to his team, assembled on the bridge for final briefing. Our mission is precise and limited. We extract the Council's classified weapons research before neutralizing the facility. Admiral Stone and President Rodriguez have been explicit. This is not about casualties, but about removing a direct threat to Earth and sending a message the Council cannot ignore. The 12-person strike team, the best of Earth's special forces, listened intently. Each had been chosen not just for their combat skills, but for their technical expertise and ability to operate in alien environments. Dr. Evans, Wilson addressed the team's chief science officer. What's our primary extraction target? The scientist pulled up a holographic display of the station's layout. The central database contains weapons schematics going back 3 centuries, but our priority is the Sunfire project, a directed energy weapon capable of targeting specific genetic markers. According to the files from Theros III, it's what they used on New Chicago and plan to use on other colonies. Wilson's expression hardened. A weapon that targets humans specifically. All the more reason to remove it from their arsenal. He turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Reese. How long will the download take? With the quantum drives we've brought, approximately 20 minutes for the primary data, another 10 for secondary targets. We'll need to move fast. Even with phase shift technology, we'll eventually be detected once we're inside. Wilson checked the mission clock. The demonstration is scheduled to begin in exactly 45 minutes. That gives us 30 minutes to get in, get the data, and get out. The Nemesis approached Omega Station, passing through the outer defense perimeter without triggering alarms. Using minimal thrusters, the ship maneuvered to a maintenance airlock on the station's dark side. Phase shift at 60%, announced the systems officer. We're still partially detectable if someone is looking in exactly the right place with exactly the right equipment. Wilson led the strike team to the airlock. Each member wore advanced stealth armor with personal phase shift generators calibrated to match the ship's field. Remember, we're ghosts, not invaders, Wilson reminded them. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. The team exited the Nemesis through the airlock, crossing the short distance to the station in zero gravity. Their specialized equipment allowed them to bypass the station's exterior security and enter through a maintenance hatch. Once inside, they moved like shadows through the dimly lit corridors. The station's internal security systems registered occasional anomalies, unexplained temperature drops, momentary sensor glitches, but nothing substantial enough to trigger alarms. Following Evans's guidance, the team made their way to the central research hub. Occasionally, they had to pause as council personnel walked by, completely unaware of the intruders partially phased out of normal space-time. Central database ahead, Evans whispered through the comm. 2 guards and 3 technicians present. Wilson signaled for the team to hold position while he assessed the situation. The room contained the main computer core, a towering structure of crystalline matrices and energy conduits. The 2 guards stood at the entrance while technicians worked at various consoles. We need them out of there without raising alarms, Wilson decided. Jackson, atmospheric control. Specialist Jackson accessed a nearby maintenance panel and carefully adjusted the environmental controls for that section. The oxygen level in the room began to drop, not enough to cause harm, but enough to make the occupants lightheaded and trigger safety protocols. Within minutes, warning lights activated and a computerized voice announced, "Environmental system malfunction detected in central database. All personnel evacuate until reset complete." The guards and technicians quickly left the room, sealing it behind them. As soon as they were gone, Wilson's team entered and secured the door. Evans, Reese began the data extraction, everyone else defensive positions. Evans connected their quantum drives to the main computer, while Reese bypassed the security systems. "I'm in," Evans announced. Beginning download of Sunfire project data. As the team worked, Wilson received an encrypted communication from the Nemesis. "Lieutenant Council security vessels just entered the system. Routine patrol, but they'll detect us if they come close enough." "Understood. Maintain position and phase shift." We'll be done soon. Wilson turned to Evans. How much longer? 12 minutes for primary data. We're at 28%. Wilson made a quick decision. Focus only on the Sunfire project and related weapon systems. Skip the historical archives. While the download continued, Lieutenant Park approached Wilson. Sir, I've accessed their personnel database. Several of the scientists here are requesting asylum. Wilson looked surprised. What? According to these records, at least 12 senior researchers have filed official protests against the weapons they were forced to develop. They specifically objected to the genetic targeting capabilities being used against humans. This was unexpected information. Can you identify these scientists? Park nodded. Already done. Most are currently in Laboratory Section 7, 2 levels down. Wilson considered the implications. These scientists could provide valuable intelligence and expertise if they truly wished to defect, but extracting them would complicate the mission significantly. Contact the Nemesis. Inform them we may have additional passengers. Then find a way to get a message to these scientists without alerting security. Park worked quickly, using the station's internal messaging system to send an encoded alert to the potential defectors. A simple message that would mean nothing to others. Environmental systems require inspection in Shuttle Bay 4 in 20 minutes. Meanwhile, Evans reported progress. Download at 63%. We're getting everything on the Sunfire project, including prototype specifications and deployment records. The minutes ticked by tensely as the team worked. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. We've been detected, Reese announced, checking her instruments. How? We're still phase-shifted. They're not detecting us directly, Evans explained, studying a security monitor. They've noticed the data access. The system is alerting them to unauthorized downloads. Wilson made a quick calculation. How much longer? 4 minutes for complete download. Keep going. We finished the mission. Wilson turned to the rest of the team. Prepare for extraction. We may have company soon. True to his prediction, they heard footsteps approaching. Security teams responding to the alarm. Wilson positioned his team at the entrance, weapons ready but set to non-lethal force. Download complete, Evans announced, disconnecting the drives. Move out. Alternative route to Shuttle Bay 4, Wilson ordered. The team exited through a maintenance tunnel just as security forces entered the main room. Moving quickly through the station's service corridors, they avoided most patrols and used their phase shift technology to pass undetected when direct contact was unavoidable. When they reached Shuttle Bay 4, they found 7 scientists waiting nervously, pretending to inspect environmental systems. Are you the ones who sent the message? Asked an elderly Bentari scientist, her large eyes darting around anxiously. We are, Wilson confirmed. You wish to defect? The scientist nodded. I'm Director Mallon. We've been trying to stop the Sunfire project for years. What they did at New Chicago was genocide, and they plan worse. We're leaving in 3 minutes. Bring only what you're carrying now. As Wilson's team prepared for extraction with their unexpected allies, the real purpose of their mission approached its culmination. The demonstration was about to begin. Admiral Stone watched from the bridge of the UES Reckoning as the mission clock counted down to 0. The strike team has secured the data and is extracting with several defectors, reported. Communications, Stone nodded. And the prototype? Charged and ready. The Nemesis reports optimal positioning. Stone took a deep breath. Proceed with demonstration. The UES Nemesis positioned itself 10,000 kilometers from Omega Station, within clear view of the station's observation decks and the Council patrol ships that had now detected its presence. The sleek warship dropped its phase shift, becoming fully visible for the first time. Council vessels immediately moved to intercept, weapons charging. They broadcasted threats and demands for surrender on all frequencies. Inside the Nemesis, Wilson's team and the defecting scientists watched from the bridge as Captain Rodriguez addressed the Council forces. Earth's brutal retaliation. Stunned the Galactic Council into silence, Part 5. The final confrontation would not take place on a battlefield, but in the ancient Hall of Arbitration on neutral Tau Ceti 4. For thousands of years, the massive circular chamber with its 50-meter-high dome of transparent crystal had served as neutral ground for resolving conflicts between spacefaring civilizations. Now it would host the most significant diplomatic meeting in recent galactic history. The hall stood on a small island in the middle of an azure sea, isolated from the planet's sparse population. As ships from Earth and the remaining loyal council members arrived in orbit, the planet's automated defense systems ensured no military action could occur in this protected space. Inside the hall, representatives were gathering under the supervision of the Galactic Sentinels, an ancient race that had evolved beyond physical form millennia ago and now existed as energy beings. The Sentinels rarely interfered in the affairs of younger species but served as arbitrators when requested by both sides of a conflict. Admiral Victoria Stone and President Maria Rodriguez led the Earth delegation. Stone wore her formal military uniform, while Rodriguez chose civilian attire, a deliberate contrast to show that Earth was both capable of war and committed to peace. Across the circular table sat High Minister Dravox and the Council, loyalists who still refused to acknowledge humanity's demands. Security Director Melchior stood watchfully behind his leader, his eyes constantly scanning the room for threats. The remaining seats were filled by representatives from neutral worlds and council members who had broken ranks to support negotiations. In the center of the chamber, a sentinel materialized as a pillar of softly glowing blue light. When it spoke, the words formed directly in the minds of all present. "We gathered to resolve the conflict between Earth and the Galactic Council," the sentinel began. "Both parties have agreed to binding arbitration. Evidence will be presented, arguments heard, and judgment rendered. This judgment will be enforced by the collective will of neutral worlds." President Rodriguez rose first. "We thank the Sentinels for mediating this dispute. Earth does not seek dominance or revenge, only justice for the attack on New Chicago and an end to the systematic suppression of younger species." High Minister Dravox scoffed. "Justice? You speak of justice while your shadow fleet holds our homeworlds hostage, while your weapons target our most sacred institutions." The Sentinel's light pulsed once, silencing further outbursts. "Present your evidence, Earth representatives." Admiral Stone activated a holographic display showing the complete data extracted from Theros III and Omega Station. The evidence of Protocol Limitless was presented in full. Council deliberations authorizing the controlled regression of human civilization, the planned systematic destruction of human colonies disguised as accidents, and the testing of genetic targeted weapons. New Chicago was not an isolated incident or a mistake, Stone explained, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. It was the first implementation of a planned genocide against humanity. Several neutral representatives gasped as the full evidence was displayed. Even some council members seemed shocked by the extent of the conspiracy. "This was not authorized by the full council," protested Representative Lyra Taval, who had taken great risk to contact Earth earlier. "Many of us had no knowledge of these plans." "That is correct," Rodriguez acknowledged. "Our evidence shows the conspiracy was limited to certain elder races who feared humanity's rapid advancement. We do not hold all council members responsible." Dravox rose in anger. "This information was stolen through acts of war. The humans infiltrated our most secure facilities, disabled our defenses, and threatened our homeworlds. Their actions far outweigh any alleged plans against their colonies." The trial continued for 3 days. Witnesses were called, including survivors from New Chicago and the scientists who had defected from Omega Station. Director Mallon's testimony proved particularly damaging to the Council's case. "I helped develop the Sunfire project," the elderly Bentari scientist admitted. "It was presented to us as a defensive technology, but when I discovered it was being modified to target human genetic patterns specifically, I filed official protests." She displayed her own records. "These protests were ignored, and I was threatened with imprisonment if I spoke publicly. On the 3rd day, as judgment seemed imminent, emergency alerts suddenly blared throughout the hall. A communications officer rushed to Admiral Stone. "Admiral, we're detecting a large council fleet approaching Earth. They've broken through our defensive perimeter and are preparing to attack." The chamber erupted in chaos. The Sentinel's light flared brightly, restoring order. "Is this true?" the Sentinel demanded of Dravox. The High Minister's scales rippled in what might have been satisfaction. "We are not bound by this arbitration. While you debate words, we take action." Stone received continuous updates through her secure communicator. The attack fleet consists of 30 capital ships and support vessels. They've somehow bypassed our early warning systems. Rodriguez faced Dravox with cold fury. "You never intended to honor these proceedings." This was a distraction while you gathered your forces. Of course, Dravox replied. Did you think we would surrender our authority because of one demonstration? The Council has weathered greater threats than humanity. Stone studied the tactical data flowing to her device. Madam President, the attack fleet will reach Earth in approximately 20 minutes. Rodriguez nodded grimly, then addressed the chamber. We came seeking peaceful resolution. The Council chose war instead. She turned to the Sentinel. We must defend our homeworld. This arbitration is effectively ended by the Council's actions. Before they could leave, the chamber's displays activated automatically, showing live feeds from Earth's orbit. The attacking Council fleet approached the seemingly defenseless planet. Watch, humans, Dravox said smugly. Watch as your homeworld faces the true might of the Council. But as the Council fleet entered Earth's orbit, they encountered something unexpected. A massive energy field suddenly became visible, surrounding the planet in a shimmering blue barrier. When the lead Council ships fired their weapons, the energy simply dissipated against the shield. What is this? Dravox demanded, his confidence faltering. Stone allowed herself a small smile. That is Earth's planetary defense shield. Technology reverse-engineered from the Council's own classified research, combined with human innovation. Your weapons cannot penetrate it. The displays showed Earth's defense systems activating. Rather than destructive weapons, targeted electromagnetic pulses shot out from orbital platforms, precisely disabling the attacking vessels one by one. The Council ships lost power weapons and propulsion systems, but life support remained functional. We could destroy your fleet entirely, Rodriguez explained. Instead, we're simply neutralizing the threat. Your crews will be safely evacuated before their vessels are dismantled. As the gathered representatives watched in amazement, Earth forces began the methodical process of disabling the entire attack fleet without causing a single casualty. Rescue shuttles approached the powerless Council ships to evacuate their crews. The visual feeds showed Council personnel being safely transferred to containment vessels, where they would be held as prisoners of war but treated with dignity. Meanwhile, the disabled warships were systematically dismantled by Earth's specialized vessels. The message was unmistakable. Even in victory, humans chose restraint over annihilation. Dravox stared at the displays in disbelief. Impossible. Our intelligence said your defenses were concentrated with your shadow fleet. Earth itself was supposed to be vulnerable. We wanted you to think that, Stone replied. We knew you might attempt exactly this kind of desperate attack. We've been preparing Earth's defenses for decades. The Sentinel's light brightened, drawing everyone's attention. The evidence is clear. The Council, under the leadership of the elder races, authorized illegal actions against human colonies. When confronted, they attempted further aggression despite agreeing to arbitration. The ancient entity's judgment was swift and decisive. The current Council structure is dissolved, effective immediately. Those responsible for authorizing Protocol Limitless will face trial for crimes against sentient beings. A new galactic governance will be established with equal representation for all spacefaring species, regardless of their technological age or history. Dravox and his closest allies were immediately taken into custody by Sentinel. Enforcement drones, sleek silver machines that appeared from hidden chambers in the hall. This is outrageous, Dravox protested as he was led away. The Council has stood for 50,000 years. You cannot simply dissolve it on the word of humans. The Council dissolved itself, the Sentinel responded, when it abandoned its founding principles of protection and guidance in favor of suppression and genocide. 3 months later, Commander Thomas Hayes stood on the memorial grounds built where New Chicago once stood. The site had been transformed into a beautiful park with gardens, monuments, and a central memorial listing the names of all those lost in the attack. Beside him stood Lyra Taval, now serving as representative of the Replace the Council. The Etheri diplomat had been instrumental in helping reshape galactic governance, ensuring younger species had